Also, one way in which we can add real value to a property, for instance, is learn skills to develop your property so you don't have to use a building contractor. So you work with a subcontractor, make sure it's still compliant to all the health and safety regulations, but you can do a building project for a third of the price if you bypass a building contractor. So learn skills that one can learn. I know that the Hawks have done that, and many others here have worked on their properties and done things like that. So there was just a question on retirement annuity. What was the other question? Gold and silver. Gold and silver, great investment. If fiat currency crashes, like many people are predicting, and the Bible says it will happen at some point, money will fail again, and it happens periodically in history. This happened. Gold and silver, yes, is commodities that will help us to trade, and so I would say silver is even more than gold, because if you've got a Kruger Rand, it's, I don't know what the current value is, 35 to 40,000 Rand. Does anybody know what a Kruger Rand? 45,000 Rand. So I mean, if I bring a 45,000 Rand Kruger coin to Spar and say, can I have a bottle of milk, please? How are they going to give me change? You know, whereas silver is a much more tradable commodity. However, if you're there in debt, okay, don't even think about buying gold and silver. We first need, that's the biggest giant, we first need to get that going. And I would say, once you've invested in wealth in the sense of properties that can bring income, and you've got that going, and you've got excess capital here, that you can buy gold and don't worry about it, and you lock it up in your vault. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to live off it. That's a good, like an insurance policy. Okay, but you have to be able to buy it and keep it for 10 years or whatever until a crisis comes. So there's wisdom in that, but the order is important. It doesn't help you do that. You don't have bread on your table and you're overwhelmed with debt. Okay, does it help? Any other questions? Living annuities. I do not know enough about that to comment. Okay. Yes. So yeah, it seems like explained here, it seems like a valid investment. My question always is, if somebody's going to take commission on that, then they're actually going to take my money, and before I get any return on investment, somebody is going to pay their salary from my money. So I've got an issue with that. Does that make sense? So just find out what is the commission structures to these things. Yes. The answer, living annuities. She just asked, what about living annuities? And then he answered. Dylan just answered.
Hello. All a living annuity, so annuity is just something that either you pay once a month or it pays once a month, a set amount. So you invest a certain amount of money up to a point in time. At some point in time, that money vests, and then from then on, based on the vested amount, it pays a certain kind of monthly living kind of thing. That's normally how it's set up. And then it just keeps on paying until the money is either used up or you pass away, in which case it goes to the estate, normally.
So it might be a good option. It's just a matter of who gets commission on the money. And remember, for every 1,000 Rand you put into the bank in any of these investments, the bank takes that and they invest it 100 times over into Forex and this and that and that. So just make sure, if you give your money to somebody else, let me put it like this way. If you ever give your money to somebody else, make sure that that person is going to take care of your money better than you, is going to produce more with your money than what you can do yourself, and is going to multiply it better than what you can multiply it yourself. Otherwise, keep your money, invest it in a property that you own, that you can manage yourself. And I don't give money to other people, not to a Forex broker, not to a Ponzi scheme. I don't give money to the bank. I don't trust the bank with my money. It's safer in my own hands, I feel. I've got control. That's me. Not everybody's got the skill set or have developed the skill set that I have in terms of property, but it's something that can be developed. There's some good products out there. But just make sure, if you entrust somebody else with your hard-earned money, they must take much better care of it other than you can do yourself. Does it make sense? Just as a rule of thumb. Any other questions? Yes, Nikki. But you want to say it over the mic, otherwise we have to.
So taking from what you said, how does one buy property without using the bank to get a bond?
No, you want to use the bank. You want to get a bond. If you can, by all means, get a bond. Use the bank's money, because then you only have to use 10% of your own money to buy it. Just make sure that you buy the property below market value, so that you don't put yourself under pressure, so you can immediately put tenants in the place and cover all your expenses. So it must never become a liability to you. The moment it's a liability to you, it drains your finances. Okay. In the book, there's a whole checklist. I think there's a checklist of 10 things of what is a good property. And so if you can tick all the boxes in those 10 things of how much you can rent it out for, so what I would typically do, I'll go and check what the asking price for the house is, or what I could probably pay on an auction. I'll call a local agent and say, listen, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom house rented in the same area. This is the square meterage of the house, more or less. It's either modern or it's a little bit outdated. How much rent am I looking at? Or you just look on the internet for something that's comparative. So get a realistic rental price. There's 10 questions you answer about the area. Is the area going upward? Are people developing in the area? Or is it the area that goes, and it gives you 10 nice little, like a questionnaire. You fill that in any property you buy. And if that thing says it's a good property, it's good to go, you score above a certain measure, you've got a very high percentage, it's going to be a great property investment. But if it says no, just don't buy the property. So it's in the book, but I don't have time to go into that, because this is not primarily a property seminar, it's a financial stewardship seminar, but part of it we just touch on property. But you want to use the bank's money. Why would you put 2 million rand of your own money in that property if you can use 10% of your own money, buy the property at half the price, get tenants to pay off the bond, and give you something extra every month, and then you can do that with another property. So you want to borrow money from the bank just for that, okay? If you can avoid all other forms of debt, I know it's difficult with car debt. I myself have a car payment, praise God, October this year. Our cars will be paid off, so we will save 10 grand a month on that. But if by all means you can go without paying car debt, that's A+. If that's ideal. But if you can't, I know, not everybody is there. It's like car debt is like, it's an unnecessary, it's a painful debt that we have. Credit cards, in a sense, is a no-go. Clothing accounts, that's unwise debt. So there's four quadrants of debt. We're going to get to it now. Okay, let's get to the next session, and we'll have more questions. Just park that question. So this is our final session, and this is really going to get practical in a moment's time. We want to move from financial exile to freedom, and actually the whole wealth creation book is a study from Genesis to Revelation, and Israel's journey through the Bible is actually it's almost like a metaphor of our journey financially. Right from the beginning, God intends to bless us. He gives us the 4 pillars of blessing. Man messes it up. We need to relearn God's wisdom. We get ourselves into financial bondage, like Israel got themselves into exile, so they're in slavery, and then how to get out. And then the New Testament, and we're not going to touch on the New Testament at all, because Pastor Kobus is going to preach an exciting series shortly called Overflow. And what Overflow is really about, it's the New Testament pattern of supernatural giving and receiving. Now, most of you must have heard something about what we call the prosperity doctrine, or the prosperity movement. And there was this whole thing about name it and claim it, and you just give, and people give this crazy testimonies of God told me to give my last $1,000, or I gave it on credit, and then suddenly there's this $1 million that came. I mean, we all heard it, and then everybody empty their pockets and their bank accounts and their credit cards, and they get all psyched up with giving. And that is not God's wealth plan. That is an abuse of a principle. There is a principle of prosperity in the word. But if greed takes hold of that principle from the person presenting it and the person sitting in the pew, If I tell you, if you give 1,000 rand now, I promise you, God says, you're going to be a millionaire within the next year. Okay? If you're fed by greed and I'm led by greed, then some people will do it. I'm just saying it happens here, right in our city, in our town, in our country, in our time. And that's an abuse, that's a twisted way of God's heart to prosper us. So we don't drive this thing with greed, not from the pulpit, not from the pew. But we have the belief that God wants to prosper us because we are covenant people. And if we can learn His principles and apply His principles, we will prosper. Does that make sense? So we're not coming in here with these random testimonies, these crazy things, because those testimonies are not true for all people. But I tell you what is true for all people. If you apply good stewardship principles, if you honor God with your tithe, He will bless you. He is not a man that He can lie, and He is no man's debtor. He will honor His word. And so the New Testament, a lot of what is written where the prosperity gospel comes from is in the latter part of Scripture, like the epistles, where there's this amazing testimony of giving and receiving. But that's at the end of the book. All the other chapters right through the Gospels talks about stewardship, talks about wisdom, talks about don't go into financial exile, don't go into debt. So we can't just stand on the last portion of Scripture and say, yes, I'm just going to give and then God's going to bail me out of all my nonsense. No, you can't do that. We need to have the whole counsel of God when it comes to finances. And that's also why I do encourage you to get the book. There's also, you can listen to what we've presented here. If you want the full course, Pastor Kobus, I can send you the YouTube links as well. And folk can listen over and over and watch the full presentation, which is more complete than this weekend, less complete than the book, but it's at least more. But get the whole counsel of God. And yes, then there is this thing about supernatural giving and receiving, and we can break into that. But it's not a free-for-all. Does it make sense? Okay, so financial exile. How do we move from exile? In Lamentations 3 verse 14, so Israel found themselves in exile in Babylon because of their own decisions. And it says this, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. So there's a repentance, a turning. Let us lift our hearts and our hands to God of heaven and say, we have sinned and rebelled, and you have not forgiven. You have covered yourself with anger and pursued us. You have slain without pity. You have covered yourself with a cloud so that no prayer can get through. Israel here is in a terrible state. God is not hearing their prayers. They got themselves into trouble. They got themselves into slavery. They're praying for a miracle. God is saying, you are violating my principles. And because you're violating my principles, don't even bother praying for a miracle because I'm covering my prayers. I'm not listening to your prayers. So the first thing we have to do if we're in financial exile is examine our ways. Can you say, examine my ways? Exile was the consequences of Israel's own decisions. The decisions that I made yesterday and last year determined my financial reality today. Whatever your financial reality is today, it is the cause of the decisions that you and I have taken yesterday. And whatever decisions we take today will determine our financial future. Okay? And so, I've got the saying, if we blame, we remain. Like Israel in the wilderness. But if we own up, we grow up. And we can enter our promised land. And so many times we remain stuck in the wilderness because we keep blaming this and that and the economy. But God says if you take ownership, then you grow in maturity and then you can enter the promised land. And so financial exile or being overwhelmed with debt, it forces us to do introspection. We have to look inside ourselves. Ask ourselves, why am I in the position that I am in? God didn't put me here. I know there's an evil worldly system, yes, that is rigged against us. But essentially, the world didn't come and take my credit card and swipe it. Although these days they do it, you know. But you know what? The world didn't do it. I swiped that credit card. I bought that clothes on credit. It's my response. It was the decisions I took. And so God says, consider your ways. Think about the way you're doing life. Honest introspection, start with facing the foolish decisions I have made. And we know Proverbs says the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender. So I put myself into slavery when I borrowed money. Okay, we've done this exercise where we calculated how many of our time in a month we spend for ABSA, working for ABSA, working for this company, working for that company. So you don't have to do it again. If you can go to the next slide, just to show you the cycle. It's almost like a whirlpool that just sucks us. That's how the world system works. So we borrow to fill the gap. We want a certain lifestyle, we want that new car, and it seems we can pay 1,500 rand more on our car payment, so we upgrade to that car. We borrow money so that we can have that better lifestyle, feel better about ourselves. Okay. Number two, more of our money now, monthly, goes into paying off of debt. And because more money goes into paying our liabilities and debt, we need to keep more money to pay our debts and to maintain this lifestyle that we have now. So it's a kind of a vicious cycle. Number four, suddenly we reach a point where all our income goes to repaying debt until we have nothing left to spend or to invest or to save. And the result of this is we can't be the blessing that we were designed and assigned to be. And so we just kind of sucked into this whirlpool. Now, how many of you can plot yourself somewhere on that cycle? Well, thank you. Let God be God and every man a liar. Okay? It's true. All of us are somewhere in that spiral. In Isaiah 28, now all of these scriptures are in the prophetic books representing the time where Israel is in exile now. And it speaks to us when we are in financial exile. Isaiah 28, it says, the understanding of this message will bring sheer terror. The bed is too short to stretch out on, the blanket too narrow to wrap around you. I heard this amazing quote, I think the day before yesterday. Somebody said, if the pain of not changing becomes more than the pain of changing, then we become willing to change. But as long as the pain of changing is more than the pain we currently experience, we stay in our comfort zone. And so God uses the discomfort of financial pressure to wake us up. So He lets the bed get shorter and shorter and shorter until we can't be comfortable. You know, every minute I spend watching sport, every minute I spend on social media, every minute I spend watching whatever on the internet is a minute wasted that I could have produced something of value that could have gotten me out of my hole of debt. Does that make sense? Okay, number two, not only consider our ways, number two, conquer complacency. God is shortening our bed and He's saying, I'm going to wake you up because you've become complacent. He uses financial exile to shake us up out of our complacency. Complacency in the Hebrew language, as King Solomon uses it in the Proverbs, means an open door. An open door. It talks about the complacent fool. And the word complacency means an open. Remember the dream I shared last night I had while we were still at Cross Culture? That we came here, the church was being robbed, and Liam Neeson said to me, you're leaving the doors open. You see, complacency opens the door so the devil can come in and steal from our lives. And so you are here this weekend because you realized you have maybe become a little bit complacent. You have realized that something needs to be done, something needs to change, some shift is needed in the way we think and the way we apply ourselves and the way we do our finances. And we have to wake up from that. Listen to Amos 6 verse 1, another extract from these prophetic books written to Israel in exile. Woe to you who are complacent in Zion. Zion being Jerusalem, but in the New Testament, Zion speaks of the church. So let's translate it. Woe to you who are complacent in the church. And to you who feel secure on Mount Samaria, you notable men of the foremost nations to whom the people of Israel come. God warns us. He said, don't become complacent. Zephaniah 1 verse 11. Well, you who live in the market district, all your merchants will be wiped out. All who trade with silver will be destroyed. At that time, I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish those who are complacent. who are like wine left on its dregs, who think the Lord will do nothing, either good or bad. Their wealth will be plundered, their houses demolished. And so there's this warning, red lights. God is saying, guard against complacency. We know that curiosity killed the cat, right? But how was the frog boiled? Slowly, okay? Curiosity killed the cat, but complacency killed the frog. Because he jumped into this nice casserole that was water, and it became lukewarm as it was being heated up, and you know, there was bubbles coming out, and the bubbles wasn't just his own bubbles, it was like a nice jacuzzi, and he got comfortable, he put his hands around the sides, but eventually the water just became warmer and warmer and warmer until it reached boiling point like that, and he was boiled to death. And that is how complacency can kill us. It's actually very dangerous. Somebody once said the difference between a groove and a grave is only the depth. And so be careful that we don't get stuck in a grave and become complacent. And number 3, how do we move from exile financially to freedom, is we have to change our ways. It's the only way. Change isn't change until it changes us, until we do something differently. Isaiah 30 verse 1. God speaks, woe to you, rebellious children, says the Lord, who take counsel, but not from me, and who devise plans, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, who walk to go down to Egypt and have not asked my advice, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to thrust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore the strength of Pharaoh shall be your shame, and trust in the shadow of Egypt shall be your humiliation. In a financial context, what does it mean? It means, he says, woe to you. What is Egypt? Egypt is the worldly system. So if you're in trouble financially, God is saying, don't go to Egypt for counsel. In other words, don't go to the bank and borrow more money because you're under pressure, because you're going to become a bigger slave. Take counsel from me. I've got a plan to get you out of debt. Can we borrow money for property? Yes, but not every property is a good property to invest. Does that make sense? We can, but we need godly wisdom, godly counsel. But if we run to the bank every time we need to buy a car, every time we need to buy, if we have to buy jeans and clothes on credit, we're in trouble. We're really in trouble. If we cannot afford to buy clothes cash, we're seriously in trouble. And God is saying, don't go to Egypt, because Egypt will give you an easy solution that's going to be to your long-term detriment. He says, that's why you're in trouble. You ran to Egypt. Okay. It says in Isaiah 48, thus says the Lord, I am the Lord your God who teaches you to profit, who leads you by the way that you should go. And God says, I will lead you out of this. I will lead you out of exile. I will lead you out of financial slavery. But I want to teach you to profit. So wake up, examine your ways, conquer your complacency, and then be willing to change your ways. Okay, so consider this. If you can put that slide up. Consider how debt affects your life. Consider how debt affects your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, you can write this down. Emotional stress. How much emotional stress does your debt add to your life? This, if you have a book, you can go to page, let me just see where it is. 135. Yeah, page 135. Then you don't have to write it down as well. You can just do it in your book. So how much, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does your debt add emotional stress to you? Second, how much of your mental focus goes into thinking about money, worrying about paying your car, worrying about paying your credit cards, your liabilities, all of this? Because we have to examine our ways now. That's what we're doing right now. Okay, third one, how does it affect your physical health? Is there stress-related stiffness in your neck, your shoulders. Maybe you're struggling with, you call it digestion or something because of stress. We take stress into our bodies. It manifests in our bodies, okay? Spiritual health. How does it affect your career? How does it affect your business, if you've got a business? How does stress, financial stress and debt affect your marriage and your family? In other words, your conversations with your spouse. Is most of your conversations around, ons het nie geld, we don't have money, we can't do this, we don't have money? Or is there fighting, constant fighting about money because there's never enough? How does it affect your leisure, your sport that you play, or holidays, or leisure time? How does it affect your social life? Can't go anywhere because we just stuck as slaves to this debt. How does it affect your future dreams, your plans? Like I said earlier, many times we shut down. We shut down on dreams. We shut down on imagining a better future because all we do is just serve these slave masters. We just keeping all our creditors happy. How does it affect your spiritual growth? How does it affect your purpose in life, your fulfillment? Now, because here's what it is. If I am 100% a slave to debt, in other words, if I work 20 out of 20 days to pay off my creditors, what do I have left to give to God? All my energy, all my focus just goes to repay my creditors. And that's the way the devil traps us, so we can't actually serve God. So here you are in church saying, God, I want to serve you, use me. If you can use anything, use me. And God says, what part of you is available to be used? It's like nothing I can use. There's no overflow. Okay, so I know this is sobering, so it's awfully quiet in this Holy Baptist church this morning. Very sobering reality. And how does it affect my testimony out there? Like I said, how can we be the light of the world if we can't pay our water and lights account? Is it beginning to affect my testimony? I can't pay people anymore, and I borrow money from my family members and people in the church, and I can't repay them because I'm overwhelmed with my debt. It affects my testimony out there. You know, the saddest thing is that we've got this saying among Christian people in the church is, whatever you do, don't do business with another Christian. And that's an indictment on us. Really it is. You know, I always laugh, and not chuckle, but people come to me and say, Pastor, we're going to do this business deal. We've got this amazing. And this other person is a groot Christen. You know, like a big Christian. I'm very scared of groot Christen. Because anybody that's a groot Christen is going to do you in bigly, largely. Be careful for a groot Christen. I must still see a groot Christen, okay? All I know, groot Christen is bad news. And it's actually sad. Okay, but how does it affect our... So I want you to just turn to your neighbor or your parent and just kind of share in your, as couples or as friends, just share, how does debt affect your life? I'm going to take a few minutes on that. Okay, good. Sobering discussion. Not a lacquer one, but a necessary one. Okay? Okay, the second one is going to be also good. If you can put up the next slide, it's the one on own your debt. Yes. Okay. So there's 4 categories of debt. It's bad debt. What is bad debt? Bad debt is debt that you can no longer repay. In other words, you can't meet the monthly installments. Okay. If you're in a space where you can't make the monthly installments on a credit card or on something, here's my advice. Renegotiate the terms with the debtor. Okay? If you can't pay on a credit card your 4,000 rand, say to them, listen, find out what the interest is. If the interest is 1,500 rand, then say, okay, can I just pay 1,600 rand at least? So just to keep them off your back and keep you from having a bad credit score as well. Okay. So that's a way you can renegotiate, and as soon as you're in a better position, then try and pay that debt off as quick as possible. But bad debt, I hope after today, nobody of us will ever again make bad debt. Bad debt is to make a short-term expense, but you're going to pay it off over a long term. In other words, you buy clothes on debt. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Satan wants us to do it. The world system wants us to do it, okay? Don't go on a holiday on credit. Because long after the holiday is gone and the effects have worn off, you're still paying off on the holiday. Does it make sense? Okay, that's why, yeah, anyway. Okay, second one is unwise debt. Unwise debt is, okay, you buy a washing machine on debt. You're going to use the washing machine for 5 years and you pay it off over 5 years or whatever. It's not wise. It's really not wise. You know, if you can't buy it cash, then rather not buy it. Okay? Then try and buy a second-hand one. Katinka and I buy a lot of stuff second-hand. A lot of stuff. Because you pay, the highest price you pay for a second-hand item is half price of the new value. So I'd rather buy a newish second-hand. I buy a lot of stuff. When we did the upgrade of our house now with the swimming pool, I told you we bought the swimming pool for 5,500 rand, including the pump. Then I bought, and those pools cost about 60,000 rand to install, okay, if you buy the whole new thing. Then I bought a heat pump that's worth new 25 grand. It was used 2 years in a mall, in a shop in the Mall of Africa, but they cost 25 grand new, but still brand new, haven't been used. We paid 5,000 for it. Okay, so I bought it at 20% of its value. Okay, so we did, just now, we did 500,000 rands worth of work. We increased the value of our property with 500K, and it cost us 110 or 120,000 because we buy things second-hand. When Donovan Turvey, when we just left, he called me, he said, I've got a braai, a Mega Master braai, built-in braai that I'm not going to use. Do you want to buy it? I said, okay, send me pictures. I went online, I checked Mega Master, the stainless steel built-in braais cost 26 grand. He said he wants 3.5 for it. I said, I'll take it. I bought it. And I bought a gas braai that we built in, same thing. Bought it for 5, it cost 25 new. So we added a lot of value to our house. So what I'm not saying you can't have that lifestyle. That's not what the word says. But you don't have to pay 500,000 rand for it. You can pay 100,000 for it. But have the value of 500,000 if we are led by the Spirit. That's why God says, don't go to Egypt. Because all Egypt is saying, sure, we'll borrow you the money. Get yourself deeper in debt. Get yourself more enslaved. If you want that lifestyle, you have to pay that. No, you don't have to pay that. There is a way in God. God says, I will teach you to profit without making you a slave to the world system. Does that make sense? So it's not that we can't have nice things, but don't let the nice things have you in the hold and bondage of slavery. Does it make sense? It's not that you can't drive a nice car, but I find that for most people, the car drives them. Yeah, the monthly payments drive. Now I need to work 10 days a month just to pay the car. You know, it's not, God doesn't mind us owning a good house. But I think for most of us, the house owns us. We don't own the house owns us. And so, just get it the right side up. So there's bad debt, then there's unwise debt, then undesired debt. I would say a car payment is undesired debt. I don't want to have a car payment ever in my life again. I have one. It's painful. It goes off on the 26th of every month. But I pray to God that after this car is paid off, if I buy a new car or a demo model, rather buy a demo model of a car. Because you save already 30-40% and it's still a very new car. And try and buy it cash if you can. If you can. I don't ever want to buy a new car again, and I don't want to sit with another car payment in my life. Because that means cash. If I don't have to buy a car, it means 10,000 rand extra cash that I can invest in property, or I can bless somebody with, or I can do something with. Does that make sense? Okay. If you want to listen to other sources, he will spare a little bit. But one of the best guys on getting out of debt is Ramsey. Is it David Ramsey? Dave Ramsey. Listen to him. Look, he's going to use a few swear words. He's a born-again Christian, but he's a hardcore businessman. He is a Christian, by the way. But he used the word crap and things like that as well. But if you can get over that, he's so solid on getting out of debt. and he's a no-nonsense. He just helps us to get the cobwebs out of our head concerning debt, because we're all spiritual about it, and he just cuts to the bone. So undesired debt, and then acceptable debt. What is acceptable debt? Acceptable debt is when I can use somebody else's money, the bank, invest that into an asset that has no risk or very low risk, and make much more money from that asset than what I need to pay back to the bank. That's acceptable debt. It's like financing a business. But remember, financing a business is actually much more risk. The risk is much higher on that than even property. Because many businesses fall within the first 5 years. I think about 80% of businesses don't make 5 years. So it's actually not always a risk-free bond that you take or loan that you take. But if you've got a guarantee that you're going to make much more money with this money, then by all means, borrow the money, make double the amount of money, pay the bank their money from the business. There is value on having a bond on your house, if it's a rental property. There's a lot of value, because you can write all the interest that you pay on the bond, you can write it back against tax if you've got a tenant. So the moment you rent out even just a flat at your house, on your salary tax, you can claim back your interest. Okay, so what I want you to do is quickly write down there, what is the amount? Now I know this is getting personal, but if we're honest, God will meet us at the place of honesty. What is the amount that you owe in bad debt and the monthly payment on that? What is the amount that you owe on unwise debt, credit cards, clothing debt? You can pay it a month, but it's blood money every month, okay? What is the amount that you owe on undesired debt, like car debt? And what is your monthly installment? And then what is the amount that you owe on acceptable debt? In other words, a house bond or an investment property, or maybe you've borrowed money for a business, and whatever you bought with that produces much more money than it requires. And then work out your monthly installments on that. We're not going to share this with one another. I just want you to write it down just for your own consideration. If you're not sure, you can go home and go and do the exercise at home and maybe draw your statements and check your repayments on that. But you need to know how much you owe and how much that is costing you every month. Because when you know it, it becomes painful, and it needs to be painful. We need to know the percentage of our life that we are enslaved, so that we don't get deeper into that, but we can work out. Okay, number 4, what do we do to move from exile financially to freedom is exit the danger zone. Can you say, I need to exit the danger zone? How do we do it? Quickly, 10 points. Financial crisis changes the rules and priorities. In COVID, our financial priorities changed. In COVID, when our salaries were cut and we lost some of our rent, Katinka and I sat down and we said, okay, our primary objective now is to survive as a family, but also to protect our assets. So before I pay anybody else, I pay my bonds. I don't want to lose a property. If you lose a property, it's something that you've invested in over many years that you lose. So if we lose a car, I can lose a car, but I don't want to lose a property. Praise God, we never missed a car payment. We never missed a house payment. But there's some other things like credit cards and so on. We let it slip by, and maybe we catch up and we pay the minimum amount. But on our properties, we've never missed a payment. On our cars, we never missed a payment. But times of crisis, priorities must shift. DSTV goes off. That's the first thing that goes off. In fact, we haven't had DSTV for years. By the way, there's some streaming sites that you can watch sport for free. Really? Better. Even very much better. Okay? I will. Okay, stop borrowing. I've already covered point 2. 3, stop borrowing money for non-asset expenses. In other words, don't borrow money for lifestyle expenses. You only borrow money to build wealth, to build assets. Okay? Communicate honestly with your credit providers. Talk to them. When they call you, when they feel sometimes like they harass you, answer the phone, make a deal, bring it down to the bare minimum payment that you need, but make a payment so they can't take your house or your car. Number 5, stick to this new payment arrangement. If you made an arrangement to pay a minimum amount, instead of 4,000, I'll pay, on the last day of the month, I'll pay 1,500, then stick to it. Number 6, channel excess money into the highest interest rate debt. In other words, if your credit card is the highest interest rate, is 20% or 18%, then try and pay that credit card off as quick as possible. Focus on what's the highest interest, because that's going to cost us most over time. Number 7, scrutinize your living expenses and leaks. Our brother who printed out his bank statement last night, do that. Scrutinize your leaks. Cut everything right to the core. And I think this is an exercise we actually need to do annually. Every year, take your bank statement, because things creep in. It's the small foxes that oftentimes destroys the vineyard. 8, engage in honest conversations with your family, your household, not your extended family. Please don't share your financial woes with your extended family, okay? Because people like to gossip, and there's nobody to gossip better about than the extended family and their financial. Keep it private. It's awfully quiet in this Holy Baptist church this morning. Don't tell them. Just keep it private. But talk to your children. Bring your children. Say, guys, you're going to tighten the belt. The next year or two, we're going to focus on repaying debt. We're going to get out of debt. We're going to do, this is our plan. So there's not excess money for this and that. You know what my children do is, when we have those conversations with them, and it's, be careful as a parent not to throw the burden of the thing on your children, like, oh, overwhelmed. You say, guys, we're going to be all right. But for us to be all right, we have to cut this, we have to cut there, we have to do this, and we have to do that. And you know, now when my children come, they come to me and they say, Daddy, can we trust God for this? How can we make it happen? And they come and they say, we'll try and pay part of it. But can you meet us halfway? So it's not like they're just consumers and they just demand. Because here's the reality. Your family can become, your household can become your liability. It's true. If there's just one breadwinner, it puts so much pressure on that person, and everybody else's needs becomes like a liability to the breadwinner. And so partner with them, get them on board, let them carry the weight. Like last year, we live in a estate where there's borehole water. It's a little bit, as by kalk in the water, what do you call that? Those white stones, limestone. Okay, so we've got a water softener that we installed to soften the water, otherwise all your appliances pack up, and then we've got a filtration system. But there's a little taste of minerals in the water, which is, the water is much more healthier than canned water, okay? Because the canned water that you buy, there's no nutrients or no minerals in it, but it tastes a little bit like this, okay? So we were buying water, and it's not a lot, it's 300 Rand a month, so it's not a big deal. But at one point I just felt, no, we're not going to buy water. We can drink much more healthier water. It's just a matter of preference. So I warned the children. I said, listen, in 3 months' time, we're no longer going to buy water, because they play golf, so they drink liters and liters of water. So in 3 months' time, we're no longer going to drink water. We're just going to drink the small tap water, okay, the filtered water. It's healthy. It's not a health risk, okay? So they didn't pay attention to me. I warned them. For 3 months, I warned them. Then I stopped buying water. Oh, my soul, these Israelites can complain. They started murmuring about, Javen said, mense moet geld hê vir water, you know. I said, it's not about the money, son. It's about the principle. We paid money to put in the filtration system and all of this. This water is healthier. It's about, we just have to acquire the taste for that water. So it was a story. 1 or 2 times, Katinka undermined me and she poured 1 can of water, okay? And then we had some conversations. But after about 3 or 4 months, it kind of was settled. We're not buying water again in this house. And now they're all drinking this water, okay? It's more healthy for us. We're saving 300 Rand a month. We can pay extra debt off or whatever with the 300 Rand a month. So get the buy-in of your household. That's just the bottom line of the story. Okay. I don't know why I told that story, but it helps. Okay. Number 9, if your debt spiral out of control, as a last resort, consider debt counseling. Okay, remember when you go to your debt counselor, there's some permanent things that come on your name. You'll never again be able to borrow money for, say, 5 years or 7-year period, depending on what the issues are. So that's if you really, with all of these things, it just still doesn't work, then go the way of a debt counselor so that they can consolidate your debt. But that's a last resort. And then number 10, don't do number 10 only last. but number 10 should maybe be number 1. But pray for God to work over and above your efforts. I love this testimony that Pastor Kobus shared this morning, that they had this 6 months plan of turning things around, of restoring their tithe, and within 2 months, God sent a flood, a mighty flood, not just of water, but of finances. And oftentimes that's what happens. God just wants a couple of steps from our sides to show our commitment, and then He meets us not even halfway. He meets us way on the other side of halfway. And so pray that God would meet us halfway. But you see, God will not do the miracle if we don't learn the principle. Okay, fantastic. And then the last point that we want to do this afternoon is form a good plan. What does a good plan stand for? Get out of debt plan. And there's this template. Okay, so on page 137, there's first a take stock template that you can use. So it's first your income statement. So if you have a book, please turn to page 137. If you don't yet have a book, is there people that don't have a book, that would like to buy a book, but you just don't have the money right now, and you might be able to have it within the next month or so? Is there folk like that? There's no shame in that. I just want to know if we can leave some books maybe at the church, and then you can get it maybe a month from now or when you are ready. Somebody? Okay, nobody. Fantastic. Right, so 137, it says write down your household income statement, your basic pay, allowances, travel allowance, housing, overtime, phone allowances. Okay, that's all your, and then you can add your extra streams of income. Something Pastor Kobus and I talked about in the break time is just how to unlock extra streams of income, a business on the side, or this year or that year. Don't just look at your salary, think about other streams of income. So one of the things you do when you're in financial difficulty is increase your income. The other thing is reduce your expenses. So those two things work together. And so you can work out kind of your net pay and your total income on that page. And then page 138 is a household's expense statement. And so we probably don't have time to fill it in, and most of you won't have your bank statements here, but sit with your bank statement, if you would, and write down all your expenses in a month. Recurring expenses like school fees, rates and taxes, water and lights, rent or bond payment, car payment, insurance payment. For young people wanting a car, it's never just the price of the car. There's insurance, there's tires you have to change, there's services, there's fuel. There's so many extra costs that we don't consider. We think I can afford the car, but if you add everything else, then probably you can't afford the car. And so a car can be a liability. Car can be a liability as well. Okay, so just write everything down. All your cost, your leisure cost, your household cost, and take some time, okay? Okay, fantastic. So what we're going to do now is we've got 5 minutes and then we've got lunch. Is it? Okay. So I know I just don't know how to do this, because most of us wouldn't have our statements with us right now, so we can't fill in all the detail ourselves. But can we give this to you as homework? But I want some accountability here, because I don't want to send you away here and you're not doing it, because if you don't do this, then it doesn't help you attend this course. So can I ask you to do this? If you attended this, whoever is your cell leader, or Pastor Kobus, your oversight, if you're in a group, or with the Pastor Broom, Yorick, is there some of your folk here, or is it just the family? Okay. So whoever is your oversight, your cell leader, or where you report to, by the end of this week, you have to send them a WhatsApp to say, we have completed our expenses, income and expenses, our spending plan, and we've completed our good getting out of debt plan. Okay, can I ask that to leave it? Because otherwise it doesn't help you here. You just got information, but there will be no transformation. Is that a deal? Okay, and you give Pastor Kobus the right to follow up and say, hey, listen, I haven't heard from you or your salary. Is that all right? As there's 3 people that says yes. I need a yes from everyone. Okay. Okay, that's good. Because I see some of you, if we're going to do it here now, some of you are going to take 3 hours to do it, okay? Okay, so that's good. Can we go into a time of question and answers before we do lunch? And then we've finished all the content for the day. If you give me a word, I remember, your promise is a promise, okay? You give me a word, you're going to do this physically within the next 7 days and report back. That's it. If you give me a word, put your hand up. You promise? Going to do it? Word? So I'm going to see I make okay? Fantastic. You give you a word, okay. Because otherwise it won't change. It won't change your life, but you give you a word, you do this, stick to it. God will meet you halfway. I believe that with all my heart. Okay. So the right, Pastor Kobus? I think that's fair.